Hello and welcome to the KPI Institute's webinar, Implementing a Performance Management System, How to Get Buy-in from all the organization's members. My name is Andrei Costea and I will be your host for today along with our presenter Andrea Minelli. This webinar is part of a series of free educational materials that aim to enhance the knowledge and know-how of those interested, while also creating a bridge between us as a company and you, our public. The KPI Institute is a research organization specialized in business performance. It operates research programs in 12 practice domains, each linked to a certification course, ranging from strategy and KPIs to employee performance, and from customer service to innovation performance. The KPI Institute continuously builds on its values of best know-how, data and facts, and common sense to achieve its mission of integrating performance as a discipline through research publications and, what interests us today, through educational programs such as this webinar. Today, 13 years after the KPI Institute was created, we can proudly say that our products have reached professionals in 5 continents and that our public comprises a worldwide community of 73,000 members online and 28,000 registered companies on smartkpis.com. Today's webinar will document why employees may feel a certain aversion towards measuring employee performance and how organizations can engage their employees in this regard, and it will be delivered by Andrea Minelli, a business research analyst at the KPI Institute. He is a certified benchmarking professional and certified KPI professional. His research activity in the performance management field resulted in the documentation of over 500 key performance indicators examples. Andrea's undertaking in the field of performance management and improvement also consists of writing research-based articles. As a business analyst, Andrea was involved in the development of the Utilities Benchmarking Report series, covering 3 major utilities: water, gas, and electricity. Furthermore, he is currently working on the development of the top 25 KPIs in the Utilities Sector Series reports. This presentation lasts for approximately 30 to 45 minutes. Please feel free to ask any questions you might have during the webinar, as they will be answered at the end of the presentation in our Q&A session. Enjoy the KPI Institute's webinar, Implementing a Performance Management System, How to Get Buy-in from all the organization's members. Now I would like to invite Andrea to begin his presentation.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, according to your time zone, and thank you, Andrei, for your introduction, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm very glad to join you today, and together we will discuss some very important corporate topics. As you can understand from the title of this webinar, we're going to discuss about 2 main corporate areas. One is the implementation of a performance management system, and then we will discuss how we can obtain the support of our employees, the support of our workforce when we implement such a system, such a performance management system. And this second part is considered to be probably the toughest step in order to obtain the so-called support or buy-in from our workforce. Nowadays, we consider our business environment as an environment that is changing at a very fast pace. And so organizations, no matter the industry, no matter their size, have to find ways or so-called sources of competitive advantage in order to assess and perform in a better way and to remain profitable in the long run and be able to keep a noticeable gap in performance to your own advantage with respect to competitors, to the main competition. Having access to data, and nowadays we literally have and we are able to measure literally anything, we are able to assess actual level of performances, but also we can make predictions for future levels of performance, and as well as assessing new trends that can impact the profitability of our organization. On this matter, today's agenda will be focused on, I think, one of the most important components of our organization, which is the workforce. And I do believe that the workforce is the real key for sustainable profitability in the long run. So as we can see from today's agenda, we will start defining and assessing how a corporate culture can be driven by performance. We will assess what are the main attributes, and how we can create such a culture within the boundaries of our organization. Then we will assess and discuss from the employee perspective how it is perceived, how performance measurement techniques are seen, as well as how we can motivate and engage our employees in the working environment in order to assess a better performance of our organizations, but above all, to obtain the support of our employees. Another section of this webinar is going to discuss about the possible mistakes that can occur when implementing such a performance management system, so the so-called pitfalls of performance measurement, because we need to create the right environment and the right fit for such a system to be effective, to give us information useful for decision making. So we will discuss the possible mistakes that can occur and how we can avoid to make those mistakes. The last sections of this webinar is going to discuss in how we can obtain the so-called buy-in, the support of our employees when we implement such a system. So, in terms of learning objectives, I believe that this webinar can be very useful in defining the idea of having a performance-driven organizational culture and then focusing on how we can motivate, how we can engage our employees, our workforce, which I believe is reckoned to be the most important source of a competitive advantage that an organization can have. And then we will try to address the common pitfalls for performance management techniques. And the most important part is how we can obtain the buy-in, the support of our employees when we implement a performance management system. So, as you can see from the title of the first session, Define a Performance-Driven Organizational Culture, we have two key words that we see in the title, is culture and performance. With culture, I think it's a very intriguing component of the organizational system because I reckon it is definitely more appealing to emotion rather than reasoning. So it is something that can be easily felt when you, for instance, work in a company, but it is difficult to justify or to measure or to explain what that culture is. On the other hand, for performance, I do see it as a concept that is associated with processes that are much more technical than cultural. And you know, when we think of performance, we may believe of in terms of like financial performance or think of machinery performance. And so we will define what are the attributes and the characteristics of what a performance or an organizational culture driven by performance is. I would like to continue the discussion asking for your insight, for your intervention. I'm going to ask Andre for the support of launching this first poll. I'm going to explain a little bit the rules. You will have a minute to answer the question, and at the end of this minute we will discuss all together what are the main results that we have obtained. So the question is, how often are performance review meetings offered in your organizations? Please be honest and objective when answering the question, and you will have now a few seconds to answer it. So take your time. Thank you. I think that this question is very important because it can really set the pace for our discussion, and I'm very curious to see what kind of results we're going to obtain from this first poll. Andre, let me know when the results are there. Okay, so, well, the results are pretty straightforward, and it appears that how often are performance review meetings scheduled in your organizations? The result is biannually. So this is a result that I'm not very surprised about because I've conducted several research about the matter, and it appears that setting employee performance meetings on a biannual basis can be considered as a starting point when implementing such a system. And so now this was a starting point to assess how these performance review meetings are seen and how on what frequency these performance meetings and so-called management cycles occur. So the idea that we are having now is trying to define and assessing why, as an organizations, we should be guided in changing our performance through a performance that is driven by performance, a culture that is driven by performance. So this culture goes definitely beyond procedures, goes beyond values and policies. So why should we drive our culture towards a sort of performance-oriented or performance-driven culture? Well, I think that when it comes to performance culture, I see it as a pretty result achievement or result-oriented idea where changes have to be adapted and we have to react quickly to those changes inside the boundaries of the organization. So we need to change quickly and we have to be able to manage those changes in the long run, setting up an integrated and aligned management structure that the employees, so the members of our organizations, have to belong to, focusing on two main concepts. First of all is the core capabilities of our organizations, followed by our employees that have to be treated like they are the main asset of the organizations. So let's discuss why a performance-driven culture has to occur, has to happen. Well, I believe that I see a kind of mixtures of both soft skills, which can be communication skills, teamwork, collaborations, or adaptability, and a section or like more technical related attributes. So here, for instance, having a performance-driven culture can help us delineate a framework where we will have some strategic objectives that have been settled by top management, by middle management, and with hopefully the involvement of your employees. And so according to those objectives, we will need to set some performance levels that all the members of organizations must be aware of in order to give this sense of focus and direction. And this is strictly linked with the idea that having and embedding performance inside the mind of our employees, showing it in practice can definitely simplify an implementations of such a system, of a performance management system. So given that it has occurred before that we may have some barriers, some resistance when implementing such a system. So it is important to actually try to break down those barriers starting from our employees. And I believe that having a performance-driven culture can definitely encourage the disseminations of knowledge and learning, create a learning experience in terms of performance for our employees, for all the members involved in such a system, in order to assess what actions need to be taken, but above all, to assess that our employees have a crucial role. They need to contribute to the overall success of the company. So seeing their performance level and see the contribution they make can definitely boost the productivity to brand new heights. And this notion is strictly related also with the engagement of our employees. If we show some sense of belonging and if they can feel that they are actively contributing to the organizational overall success, our employees will be more engaged, and this will have a positive impact on their related performance as well as on their retention rate, because they will be emotionally attached and they will not be I should say, willing to leave because they actually see their contribution. So they want to continue this profitable working relationship. Another important concept that has to be described, I think, is the fact that we need, through a performance-driven culture, assess that the employee goals that have been settled, and but also middle management, top management, business unit goals have to be aligned with respect to the strategic plan and to the outcomes, to the final destinations that the corporation wants to achieve. So we need to set this alignment, and it has to be cascaded from top management down to the individual level and vice versa. This is a very important concept of a performance-driven culture, I believe. And then I think that in order to create a environment driven by performance and driven by a constant information and knowledge, we need to create and assess a constant flow of informations about and conversations about performance. So through feedback sessions, both from top management up to the individual level, we need to keep the communication flowing in order to assess through time of the actions that have been taken and the actions that will need to be taken in the future, or as I should say, corrective actions. Now, what are the key characteristics of a performance culture? So how can we recognize that a performance culture is a performance culture is oriented towards this matter? So I believe that there are some different features that can be discussed, and I think that the main attributes of a performance cultures include the fact that change is crucial. No matter what, change in our business sector, in our environment, is going to have a repercussion over the overall performance of the organization. So change is crucial for the survival of the organizations in terms of innovations, in terms of growth. So I do believe that leaders or top management or middle management must have the ability to communicate to and embed into our employees' mind that change needs to be embraced for the overall survival of the company. And how can we do this? How can we embed in our employees' mind that change needs to be accepted? Through any kind of communication form. So leaders must have the ability to communicate their vision and inspire their employees to actually follow them. So to create a sense of community, where we communicate, we engage with them, and we inform them of all the actions, all the events, all the processes that are occurring and that can have a repercussion over their activities. And I think that this is strictly related to having a sort of shared vision and empowerment to take decisions. So here the role of leaders, or I should say the role of coaches, must create some ideas where we need to envision and we need to share what is the final destinations. Why are we performing in this way? Why are we doing this? And why are we doing it in this manner? So having this shared vision and give to our employees the power to interfere in the decision making, to obtain and have their feedback, to hear what they're saying, it's a very empowering tool that will allow them also to take decision. In order to have this system, to have this particular situation, however, we need to be able to adapt our culture. We need to be able to create an environment that is based on continuous learning, where we focus on our core values and we focus on the actions that needs to be taken in order to achieve those strategic objectives. And it is here that the role of our supervisors, the role of our managers is going to be crucial in order to create this coaching mindset that is based on involving, in motivating, in having clear communication channels, but above all, to make feel our employees that are valuable, that they are powerful, and that we really need them for the achievement of our objectives. When it comes to having a performance-driven culture, I believe that there are different notions that pops up in my mind, and the first one that actually really is like top is measuring. We need to be able to measure how our employees are performing, and we need to be able to measure all the internal processes that are occurring in our organizations. However, what has to be actually highlighted here is that we are measuring the performance of our employees not because we want to control them, not because we want to monitor and compare them to a mere number at the end of the strategic planning. It's because we need to create this learning environment and create these learning and growth opportunities for better performance, for an improved performance through time. How can we measure though? We need data. So modern organizations have to have the competences, but above all, the habit of utilizing data for decision making. And this is a very important topic, as well as being able to measure our culture. This is something that is not easy to do. However, we have to create a system where we are able to measure the cultures in terms of alignment, in terms of execution, and in terms of renewing how the mindset of our employees is towards performance orientation. This is extremely important to assess. Now, how can we actually motivate, and how can we see the perception of our employees when it comes to performance measurement? So this is a very interesting topic, and we were going to discuss right now all together what are the main features related to this matter. So in general, I've conducted several researches about the matter, and I could notice a sort of, let me say, a sort of agreement towards the fact that performance measurement is not seen in a positive way from our employees. This is because of how the performance measurement is conducted. So we will discuss here, as you can see, some points, the main perceptions that our employees have in this matter. So it is kind of seen as a sort of necessary evil. So it is seen like a subjective process where the employees are just watched, they are timed, they are controlled. There is no coaching or mentoring activity. So we are just measuring through this bureaucratic and time-consuming system, this time-consuming process, our employees towards reviews and towards objectives that have been settled during the previous financial year. So it does not necessarily lead to a performance improvement. It's just a mere measurement. But however, what I wanted to highlight and what I was noticing while I was doing my research, while I was conducting my research, is the fact that employees have this defensive attitude towards it, especially when these deficiencies, the negative aspects of their performance are pointed out, especially when their performance is related to a sort of financial compensations, especially in this kind of situations where our employees have this general defensive attitudes towards it. However, what I believe is the most important notion here to mention is the fact that employees claim that they do not have any involvement in the development of such a performance measurement technique, of such a framework. So they're just measured against, let's say, assigned strategic objectives, but they do not have any involvement in the creation of such a system. And this is one of the main problems. That is why it is so negatively perceived by our employees. So we need to change the situation. Now, I really would like to have your opinion. So I really would like to see what do you think about this? So I'm going to launch this second poll. I'm going to ask Andre for his support. This poll is going to be about what is the importance of measuring employee performance in your organization. So as before are the same rules. You will have a minute to answer the question, and we will discuss it later. Please be and try to be as objective, as honest as possible, and then we will discuss it all together, and let's see the results. I'm actually going to be very curious to see if the results are in accordance with the findings that we have done in our research. We have conducted a research study on this matter, so I really would like to see what are going to be the results. Let me know, Andre, when we will have the results. Thank you. Perfect. So as we can see, we have 50% of the audience replied with medium priority and 25% replied with high priority. Well, I can see, and 25% also in terms of low priority. So I think that taken from the results of this poll, we still have a good margin of improvement, because I do believe that setting priority and importance in measuring the performance of our employees is crucial, because it is a very important learning experience, not only for the employees themselves, but also for all the members, for everyone from top management to middle management, that they are actually applying such a system. And so it is crucial to take into considerations that the way our employees perform have a repercussion and have an effect in the overall performance of the organization. This is a very important point that we need to assess, and there is very strong correlations among the two notions. So I think that it is very important. We need to arrive and assess that extremely high priority must be, I think, the main focus, the main objective of corporations, in order to really take into consideration the role of our employees and their related performance. Now, let's compare with the results that the KPI Institute has conducted. So last year, the State of Employee Performance Management was launched, and the question is the same as in the poll. And as you can see in the results, the survey results shows quite an overwhelming level of interest in assessing employee performance. If we consider like medium, 32%, high priority, 35%, and extremely high with 17. So just if we sum up these three, we have more than 80%. So it is important that we kind of confirm that a high level of awareness among professionals seems to relate to the key processes in which we need to manage and we need to assess the employee performance. So all corporations have to be able to assess such a performance, and all organization needs to implement such a system. We need to implement a way to control, but not in a way of punishing, but in a way of creating such a learning experience for all the members involved when controlling and when assessing the employees' performance. Now, I've recently written and published an article about this matter, about the perception and the future of performance measurement. So these 5 points here that you can see kind of summarize the ideas that I had in the article. So again, it's kind of in accordance with what we were mentioning before about the general discontent of our employees. And so this is true. There is this general unhappiness, especially lack of involvement from their side when implementing such a system. However, what is have to be discussed and highlighted here is the fact that there is this lack of clarity, because employees need to be aware of what top managers, their supervisors, are expecting from them. So realistic expectations from our employees is crucial. They need to be aware of the actions that they need to take in order to achieve those strategic objectives. And of course, when it comes to measuring performance, we're going to utilize KPIs, key performance indicator, which is, I believe, is a very important tool. And I think that selecting the right KPIs is crucial in order to obtain relevant information and to ensure that the alignment of our employees' objectives is aligned, of course, with the strategic objectives at both departmental and corporate and middle management level. Just to conclude and wrap up this section, I'm going to briefly discuss what are the trends when it comes to employee performance measurement. So, and it is actually also written in the article I have recently published about that matter. Here, it is important, especially with younger working generations like millennials, they have this strong preference for on-the-spot, short-term feedback about performance. So not following these so-called 12-month goals, but rather have quarter, monthly, weekly cycles, weekly so-called check-ins, where employees and managers are able to assess and take, in case of corrective actions, through time. But this has to happen frequently in order to keep track of the actions that needs to be taken. And here the role of the managers becomes like a role of coacher, where we install a bilateral communication flow among our members, our employees, and top management to freely discuss, to create an environment of feedback, to create an environment of explorations, but above all to create an environment of knowledge where we are able to assess and take corrective actions if needed. And the last point I think it's crucial to mention here is the fact that we need to engage our employees, and we will have the chance to discuss on this matter later. So wait a few seconds and we will be able to discuss this. So on this perspective, how can we engage our employees? This seems a pretty easy question, but there are a lot of variables that are included in this topic. So we will, I'm glad to discuss with you how we are going to find some drivers, some ways of motivating our employees. So I would like, first of all, to have your opinion on this. I really want to see what is your perspective. So what motivates you the most as an employee? This is a very important question. And as before, same rule, you have a minute, and please try to be as honest and objective as possible when answering the questions. So please take your time in answering. Thank you. The answers that you have here are considered like the top of the iceberg because there are several possible drivers of motivations for our employees. But in this matter, I just wanted to focus on the ones that are, I think, the most popular, and let's see how you're gonna decide among the possible options. Perfect. So from the results, from the survey undertaken, it appears that we have, so 50% says an inspiring manager, followed by a good team environment with 25%, and the same for a clear career path with 25%. So I'm actually pretty surprised with the results because it is actually interesting to see how the person-centered environment and the relationship that we have with our employees is such an important component to create an environment where we are able to foster knowledge and engage our employees, definitely much more than, for instance, a financial reward. So this is a very nice way of approach. This is a very good approach where we are able to assess that having a good relationship and having to deal with an inspiring manager that can take the role as a coacher, where we are able to set this flow of communications, is very important, as long as having a good team environment, but above all also being aware of our career path. So know where we can go next through our commitment and through our activities. So this was a very nice interaction that we had to see the results. And let's compare it to the questions that we have asked in our corporate surveys that we have launched last year. So it's the same, it's the state of employee performance management that was launched last year. And as you can see, with 60.21%, we have financial bonuses as the main driver that motivates you the most as an employee, followed by an inspiring manager with 53% and a good team to work with 52%. So here we have these mixtures of financial compensation as long as having, as I was saying before, this person-oriented and have this relationship with our colleagues and having a good, inspiring manager that is able to foster the knowledge, as I was saying before, as well as other important motivations as the career path, that is very important, and other possibilities like a better position within organizations or public acknowledgement of my work. This is a very important topic as well. We need to show the appreciations when our employees perform in such a way that they actually make a great contribution in the overall success of the company. Now, the question you see here is, what makes a company more successful? So it seems like a pretty easy question. However, and there are different answers I'm pretty sure are popping up in your mind. And I tried here, as you can see, to just put the first things that actually I thought were relevant when answering this question. So corporations may focus in better quality of products, or utilize a data-driven approach. So utilize the data, the analytics, to take better and time-efficient decisions, or having a tailored strategy according to your sector, according to the project you are handling, and according to your strategic plans that you have, or having a customer-oriented culture. These are all possible tools that can create a competitive advantage. However, what really motivates, what really I think is the foundations of a sustainable competitive advantage is our workforce again. It's us, it's the employees. But we need to be able to motivate our employees somehow, because if we do not have an employee that does not see the contribution he or she makes in the corporations, she may just do not perform or do the extra mile, do the extra effort to contribute to the overall success. So we need to create these motivations, and above all, have our employee that is satisfied, that he's satisfied with the work he or she is doing, with the project that she or he is handling, and be able to create this emotional attachment, being able to appreciate their involvement in the corporations, and have an engaged employee, an employee that is really able to do the extra mile, to use all his resources, all his talent or her talent to contribute positively in the organization. And I think having an engaged employee is definitely the most relevant and valuable source of competitive advantage. And here again, like we were saying before in the poll that we were mentioning, is what are the drivers of employee performance? So as we were saying before, our relationship with supervisors, or having a clear communication based on their performance, or having challenges at work, or for instance being able to have conversations with senior management in order to see their interest towards the employee, towards their activities. However, what is really important, I believe, is the involvement into decision making. This is what I think is very important to assess. We need to be able to involvement in what the decisions are and how we can take those decisions and obtain their input on that matter. To conclude this session, I think that there is a very strong correlation between the engagement of our employees as long as with the employee retentions and the overall sustainability of the company. We imagine on a more practical note, we can see that the employee engagement is like a leading KPI, is a KPI that looks into the future. And this is a KPI that an HR department can utilize to assess and provide an idea of how the turnover rate is going to be. So how is the retention rate? And considering that nowadays recruiting costs are very expensive and they can have an impact on the organizational bottom line, we need to force our organizations in engaging in retaining our employees for a better organizational sustainability. To conclude, in order to drive and motivate our employees, I think it's crucial to create an environment that is made of tangible as well as intangible elements that creates an environment of stimulus. So we need to stimulate our employees in performing better and as well as recognize of their efforts, both in a monetary or in non-monetary way, and create this environment of learning and growth and coaching, especially from the sides of our supervisors, of our top management, to create a system and an environment of performance improvement. Now, this next session is going to discuss the possible pitfalls of performance measurement. So unfortunately, as any project that can be implemented in an organization, performance measurement systems can be exposed to failures. And we will discuss why, what are the possible mistakes, what are the problems that can arise when implementing such a performance measurement system. Well, I believe that, as you can see here from the slide, I believe that having an aligned system is crucial. But what I mean by alignment is the fact that the business processes of the organizations, which can be the operations, the marketing, the recruitment, needs to have a strategic objectives. However, the objectives that we need to achieve will be subject to a measurement of their performance. So we will utilize metrics, or I should say KPIs, that will reflect on those strategic objectives. If we do not allow this alignment to occur, we will utilize and invest in resources and invest in time analyzing and assessing the data, but this data is not going to be helpful for decision making. So it is a waste of resources. We need to be able to make this alignment happen. So how can we avoid this non-alignment? Through communication, setting frequent meetings with all the members involved in order to assess step by step of how the performance measurement system fits in that particular matter. And we need to be able to ensure that the fit is there, that the relevancy is there. Otherwise, it's going to be just a waste of resources and time assessing and analyzing something that is not going to be useful for us. And this is related to the lack of customization. If we do not have a performance management system that is designed for specific challenges that are in accordance with the organizational strategy, we have a problem, because nowadays a lot of companies have been influenced by this sort of measurement mania. We are just measuring because we want to measure. Everyone is doing it, and so I really want to take care and do this as well. This is not the way it works. We need to create a thought out process in order to measure what we really need. And this is a very crucial component. So this is related again with the KPIs. If we chose KPIs that are not relevant, and this is actually the most difficult part, the selection of the KPIs is the toughest part according to corporate surveys that have been launched in the previous years as well. So the selection of those KPIs are crucial. And if those KPIs do not bring any relevancy, they don't give us any information, it is a waste of time. So how can we make sure that we are using the right KPIs? Well, we need to measure what is relevant. And I'm sure you may ask, so Andrea, what is relevant? And I think that relevancy occurs when we actually focus and utilizing KPIs that are focusing on processes, are focusing on operations that can bring value to the organization, which can bring financial value to the organization. This is what KPIs are for. We need to focus on those, the positive and I should say the value drivers of their corporation. Another possible pitfall that is aligned with the system is the fact that employees may not feel this accountability. They may lack this sense of directions and focus. And so it is important from top management and from all the members involved that we need to clarify what are the expectations for each single employee. This is a very important point. So we need to set up frequent meetings, and we need to install these constant multi-directional communications where we have a flow of ideas, a flow of feedbacks and opinions on that particular matter to make sure that the system fits, that the system is relevant. However, I believe that the most possible mistake that we can have associated with this matter is the fact that a performance measurement may fail because of cultural problems, because of resistance to change. And this is possible especially when such a system, such performance appraisals are conducted, for instance, once a year. And we have this general discontent on both sides from our employees as well as all the members that are all top management that are actually spending time and resources. So the crucial point here that I'm trying to make is that we need to treat this such performance measurement system as an ongoing process where we review it, we build it together, we can improve it together, obtaining the feedback from all the members involved, and by briefing our employees of the actions that needs to be taken and the possible changes. Let's come up now with a practical example, just to give an idea. Let's imagine that we have an hotel chain. This hotel chain is having some financial issues. The profitability is decreasing in the last years. So they decided to come up with a brand new plan and the plan is focused on increasing their profitability. So they've decided that in order to increase the profitability, they're going to set as a KPI average operational costs. So their objective is to minimize as much as possible the operational costs that they have when running their business in order to positively impact their profitability. So I'm sure that in the short term, the hotel chain may actually achieve those objectives because minimizing as much as possible the costs had definitely a positive impact on the profitability of the company. However, if we focus on the long run, it can definitely lead to a deterioration of the business because reducing costs, it will have definitely a negative impact on the quality. So numbers of visitors will definitely decrease because of the worsened quality of their services, of their hotel chain. So what I think they should have done since the very beginning is not focus on average operational costs, but they should have focused on, for instance, occupancy rate. So try to maximize the number of booked rooms per night in their hotel. So that should have been a better strategy. Or for instance, let's come up with another example. We have in the early 2000s, the boom of the dot-com companies. So there were a lot of companies and most of them had some serious financial issues month after their startup, a month after their creation. So they were focusing on KPIs that was like number of visits of their website. So they were maximizing that KPI, focusing on maximizing the number of visits. However, if I visit a website, it may not necessarily lead to revenue. So they were looking and that KPI didn't fit the actual situations in that moment. So they should have used, for instance, I think like conversion rate. So to see what really brings value from clicking and viewing your website and making a purchase. So the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that we need to customize the KPIs. We need to make sure that we are not utilizing the popular one. We need to make sure that the KPIs are related to what our strategy is, but above all, what we want to achieve. And this is probably the most important lessons that can lead to a better and more efficient and effective performance measurement system. To conclude this webinar, this section is going to discuss the possible ways where we can obtain the so-called employee buy-in. So, the crucial point of obtaining the support of our employees when implementing a performance management system within the boundaries of our corporations lies in the fact that we need to provide reason. We need to tell to our members, to our employees, why are we introducing such a system? And what is the line of sight? What are we planning to achieve from the implementation of this system? So we have to be able to describe to our employees the needed steps. What are the implementation steps and what are going to be the repercussion on our employees' daily activities? This is a very important topic to mention, as well as being able to keep a communication flow constant for debriefing section, for constructive feedback, where we are able to see how the employee is actually perceiving this system. So how can we do it? And here I've come up with this 4-step process that we will describe in detail to assess how we can obtain their support. So I think that it all starts with the organizational identity. The focus of this system is that we need to be able to embed the corporate culture, the identity of our organization in our employees, in their mind, since the very beginning of the working relationship. So since the very moment they're going to be hired, we need to make sure that they understand why are they there, what is the company trying to achieve, and how can we do that? Well, I think that it is important to communicate with any kind of tool. Communicate verbally through training, through videos, through emails, through workshops, and communicate who we are, what do we do, but above all, we need to demonstrate to our employees that their contribution is crucial for the overall success of the company, and they need to apply through their daily interactions what the company is and what the company wants to achieve. However, more than creating this communication that is, of course, from top management down, we need to be able to create a system of communications, a flow of communication that departs, it starts from our employees. So we need to obtain their feedback. We should involvement in the development of such organizational identity or in the shape through time of their organizational identity. So we have to be able to measure it, adapt it, and ask for feedback from our employees through surveys, I reckon, or think tanks, or setting up face-to-face meetings where they are able to assess how their contribution and how we can apply the identity. So why are we here? What do we want to achieve in daily projects? Once we are able to embed in our employees' mind of what the organization is about, I think that it is crucial to, especially when it comes to formulating a new strategy plan, is that we need to involve our employees. We need to obtain their feedback. We have to have questions and meetings where, while deciding the new approach or how to formulate a new strategic plan, we have to have the input of our employees, because they're not just mere executioners of orders. They want to be involved. They want to have this feeling and sense of belonging and contribution. This is what we were mentioning a few slides back in terms of motivation. So this is the moment where we involve them and we obtain their feedback. And I think that it is important to inform to our employees what do we want to achieve. So show our final destinations where we kind of be able to assess why are we doing this, what are we going to achieve, but above all, how are we going to achieve those objectives. So we need to be able to provide this sense of direction, this sense of focus to our employees. When it comes to creating a performance, a strategic performance plan, a strategy plan, there are KPIs that needs to be settled. So as I was saying before, the KPIs have to measure what it is relevant. So our employees have to be able to relate to those KPIs and relate those KPIs with respect to their daily activities and daily interaction. But how can we choose the KPI? Well, I think that the most effective way is to ask them directly. We ask to them what KPI we should monitor in order to assess your progress, in order to create this learning experience. And this way, the measurement techniques can be applied without having this sense of reluctance from the employees, because they are aware of their contribution, they know the final destinations, and they know through KPIs that we are trying to make them accountable for their action, assessing their performance and achieving an improvement in performance. So when actually we are measuring their performance, I think that the most important and crucial point that I'm trying to make here is that we are using performance measurement techniques not because we want to control you, not because we want to monitor and see how basically you are doing. We want to control and utilize KPIs because we need to obtain data and utilize that data for effective decision making in order to create a learning and growth experience to assess if we are going towards the right direction and if we are actually achieving those strategic objectives. So we need to be able to obtain the data from those KPIs and use it for efficient decision making, but above all, focus on performance improvement. We need to be able to create an environment where our employees are engaged and they are aiming at an improved performance. Last but not least, the improvement of the performance is crucial. This is what we are aiming for in order to have this better sustainability. However, I think that as the strategic planning is in the final phase, we have to be able to communicate to our employees the actions that have been taken, the corrective actions that we have taken through frequent meetings that have been settled, and assessing those KPIs that we together have agreed to do, and thank and recognize the contribution of our employees when there are when they have achieved their corporate and their KPIs targets through financial or non-financial rewards. However, what is very important here is that we need to create this coaching environment. We need to create and make our employees understand that the data we have gathered from the performance measurement is used not because we want to, I just want to measure. No, we want to utilize that data for decision making. And to create this environment of transparency where we customize the corporate culture based on frequent and meetings with open communication, where we are able to see performance-driven communications, to see the actions that have been taken, the problems that have come up through time, through the implementation of such a system, and where the solutions and when the solutions have been taken. However, a point I want to make here is the fact that transparency has to be customized with respect to the culture of that organizations, that usually it is affected by the, I should say, the culture of that country. So this is a very tailored situation where we need to customize such transparency according to the culture it is applied. So to sum it up, to come up with practical ideas, how can we obtain the support of our employees when implementing such a system? So you start embedding and communicating to your employees the culture. So why are we here? What do we want to achieve? How do we practically do it? We utilize survey, think tanks, workshops, meetings with middle management, face-to-face meetings, where we have to be able to assess that the employees are understanding what the organizational identity of is. And we actually can use KPIs. We can track this. For instance, we can utilize like percentage of employees understanding the organizational objective or percentage of employees trained in company culture. We are able to keep track of these informations. We are able to see if our employees are actually having a complete understanding of what the culture is. Then it comes with the creation of a strategic plan. So we need to involve them. We need to assess together what KPIs needs to be selected and what are the actions that we need to be taken. Then we are going to measure the performance. So here, we are not measuring the performance against a mere number. We are measuring the performance again for a knowledgeable experience to assess the usefulness of the data for effective decision making. And finally, we need to reward. We need to somehow show the appreciation and highlight to the public that the contribution of our employees was important and vital for the overall success. To conclude my presentation, I would like to have your insight. In a few weeks' time, we will publish the State of Employee Performance Management 2017. It will be open till this Friday, so on the 23rd. And please, if you feel like you can fill this survey in, we will offer for free the State of Employee Performance Management for whoever will complete the questionnaire. And so please feel free to give your contribution and to actually test what are the results from your side in your company. I wanted to thank you very much for your attention, and I think, Andre, we can open whenever you think the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Andrea. And now we shall proceed with the Q&A session. So if you have any queries or questions, please feel free to address them in the following minutes. So we have received one question right about now. Is performance culture measurable? If yes, how can we measure it? Andrea, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. Here I am. So, well, I believe that when I think of performance culture, there are quite a few notions that really I think pops up in my mind. So we think of performance improvement, we think of measuring performance, we think of strategic alignment and skills of our employees. So in order to measure our employees' performance and to make sure that they are aware of what you're accountable for, as a method, as a way of, let me say, reward and create this learning opportunity. This is the way I think we might be able to measure such a non-tangible notion like culture. So if we utilize the performance as a tool in people's hands, so if we are able to empower our employees through performance and show them their validity, I think that the performance culture can definitely be in motion. And definitely be in motion. We are able to actually assess the way we are measuring it. However, it's not an easy task to do, and it really implies the idea that the way we are measuring and the way we are treating and creating such an environment for our employees can have a repercussion in the way the culture, the performance-driven culture, is perceived.
All right, and we've received a second question. How can one choose individual KPIs that are relevant to the organization's goals?
Okay. Well, as I was saying before, the selection of the KPI is considered to be probably one of the most difficult parts of when implementing such a performance management system, because we need to make sure that we utilize and select those KPIs that are relevant, that are useful for value-driven operations. So at an individual level, it is important to establish KPIs that our employee can relate to in terms of relating to his or her daily activity or tasks. But above all, it is important that we need to make sure that the KPIs that our employee have is aligned with the strategic objectives at both middle management and corporate level. So through time and through meetings that have to occur on a frequent basis, we need to make sure that we are able altogether to assess those KPIs and take possible corrective actions if we see that those KPI do not bring more information or knowledge for decision making. And so to sum it up, we need to be able to decide and select KPIs that our employee can relate to. For instance, me as an employee, I would definitely relate more utilizing KPIs like percentage of projects handled in time rather than return on investment. I definitely see my contribution more related to percentage of projects handled in time rather than return on investment, because I can definitely see what my contribution is and how am I performing with respect to that KPI.
All right, that was the last of our question. So right now, this brings us to the end of the webinar. Andrea, do
If
you
you don't,
have any last words
yes,
for our listeners?
thank you. Absolutely. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for your attention, and I am free to answer any question you may have, and feel free to post them, and I will take my time to answer them via email individually. And if you are interested, and if you need some support when it comes to KPI selection workshop, or if you want to assess the maturity of your performance measurement system, please contact me, and we are able to assist in any way and in any manner. Thank you very much again for your attention, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again for your presentation. The KPI Institute appreciates your interest in the webinar Implementing a Performance Management System, How to Get Buy-in from All the Organization's Members. Follow our websites and our social media channels to find out more details and to subscribe to our next webinar, Increasing Performance Through Internal Marketing, which will be held on the 28th of June and will be hosted by Alexandra Iona Pescaru. Also, if you are interested in getting a certification granted by the KPI Institute on vital areas within the performance management discipline, you can explore our scheduled courses on marketplace.kpiinstitute.org. Thank you again for your participation and have a nice day.